A lady at my workplace a while ago told me a story about a child living in a more rural area of Indiana telling derogatory Mexican jokes to her friend who happens to be a pastor and laughed. My response was, yeah, that's pretty common, referring to the redneck religious mindset you find in the rural areas. She, being a Christian, said, no, he's just a bad pastor, in a rather offended voice that I would have even suggested it. After that, I began thinking about the number of pastors I knew in real life that would have laughed at such a joke, and I think I could probably count about 2. I think I've been on YouTube too long, as there are so many racist asshole Christians out there. The general public impression of the cloth, however, is nothing but positive, because the majority of them actually practice what they preach, at least in public. Swearing, telling off-color jokes, and so on go against the Bible. Even the most conservative ones tend to keep their politics to themselves, and even the political ones tone down their language and vulgarity when preaching hate. A pastor's job is to be the type of person everyone else admires, to take the religion seriously. If they can't do that, they will fail as a pastor. They're considered pillars of the community because they live the way half their parishioners live, and how the other half wish they could but don't want to actually put the effort into. If you're paid enough and focus inward on what you believe, you can act pretty close to the perfection the Bible preaches, especially if you don't actually have to work beyond saying prayers and visiting sick people. That's why in America, the non-denominational fundamentalist ministers are so appealing. Many of these pastors have other jobs. My pastor was also my chemistry teacher and a small farmer. He didn't get paid much by our church. We were, at max, 100 people strong. His sermons were just as good as any other minister, and because he didn't have the time to spend doing research in ancient texts or the latest translation in the way the Catholic or mainstream churches did, he never veered from the literal Bible. Of course, because he couldn't, he didn't understand the complex nuances of history and other new findings. He was unchanging, which is what the congregation wanted, not this newfangled fake liberal Christianity. God was never changing, and therefore the interpretation of the Bible was also never changing. For more organized churches, you go to seminary, where you learn all the serious problems and secrets about the Bible that make you question your faith. So many people lost their faith in seminary, including Matt Dillahunty. It's sort of a weeding out process of people who are either too honest or can overwrite their facts with faith. Some see that even though they realize the religion is not factually correct, they believe that for the sake of charity, community, and moral society, that perpetuating the lie is justifiable and actually a good thing. Many just can't get out of the clergy and function in real life. The Clergy Project is an organization to help clergy who are now atheists get on their feet in real society after they leave their post. Many pastors worry about how much emotional and psychological damage their coming out as an atheist could have on the older population, so they often continue to preach what they don't believe. The majority of clergy are doing what they do with the good in mind of others. The non-seminary clergy, more often than not, believe what they are saying is 100% true. The seminary graduate, probably a bit less, but most of the population, are doing it because they think they're doing good, even if it's for bad reasons. It is only a small handful, usually at the top with the most money, that are the cynical people. You don't need a bunch of liars to spread a belief or an idea. That actually has a negative impact because people can tell when you or a lot of people are lying, unless they're all really good actors. What you need is one person to lie and trap a true believer in that lie, then the lie spreads itself, which is what happens in pseudoscience, especially with all the alternative cures. One person finds a study that shows this herb or plant-based chemical or diet has an effect on mice, and suddenly they start selling the product. Someone has a placebo effect to the lie, and they become witnesses for that product. After that, the people selling are all genuine believers, and just one person on the top is raking in the dough. One of the major reasons why church-state separation was such a big thing for many of the Founding Fathers is they realized that when power came through religion, just like how most cynical sociopaths would be drawn toward politics, they would also be drawn toward religion, essentially making the religion a hollow lie with no genuine believers in charge. This happened very often in the Catholic Church over the centuries. Monks would be paid to pray a king or nobleman's way into heaven, and then the monks would get rich enough and basically own their own serfdoms. So much for the life of solitude and devotion. The second a monk went from being about poverty and finding oneself, they suddenly became about money and a power grab for those with less scruples. Corrupt bishops and cardinals and popes were very common as well. Parents would often send their older son to work for the government, or become a doctor, and send their younger son to work in the ministry, so they had two ways to gain power. Prior to the vow of celibacy being a requirement, monks and priests were some of the most avid and richest frequenters of brothels. And we see this very phenomenon happening all the time. Televangelists, megachurch pastors, and the leaders of the New Prosperity Gospel, where if you give your money to their pastor, you will get rich according to God. Sadly, it's the poor that can't afford to give this that give the most, while it's the people with the most money that give the smallest percentage. This is of course idealized in the story of the widow's mite. The poor give the highest amount to charity and stay poor because of it, both because they know what it's like to be poor, and they're more easily manipulated by people in religious positions of power. Had they invested their money instead of giving it away, they might not be poor, but sadly the statistics show they will probably give less once they get out of poverty. Of course, many churches end up taking the money and only giving a small percentage to charity. That actually helps people. Most of it goes to church upkeep or sending missionaries to push their brainwashing on people who were hungry, but were probably just fine with their own beliefs. In nature, animals will evolve shortcut methods for other animals to determine health. This is for both mating purposes and defense. A certain gazelle evolved the trait of jumping up when a predator is spotted before taking off running. This is a way to signal to the predator, hey, I'm so fit that you'll just waste your time by chasing me, so let's not waste each other's time and energy. Peacocks and other display birds will do this with their plumage size, which would be more of a hindrance than a help, saying, hey, I'm fit, I can afford this handicap, so come on, baby. However, other less fit members of the species will evolve these traits too and essentially bluff their way into mating or escape sometimes. Many times their lack of fitness is thinned out of the gene pool, but sometimes the bluff becomes so common that the trait loses its meaning and new methods of shortcuts have to be established. Pastor, priest, or reverend has for many years been a shortcut to mean good person. Many bluffers use this title and the reverence around it to gain power, money, or influence. With the rise of the pedophile sex scandals of the Catholic Church, televangelists, right-wing congressmen, and the megachurch leaders getting caught in gay scandals and money fraud, maybe that shortcut to associate good person with a person in the cloth might become broken, and maybe people will be more inclined to judge a good person based on better measures and not on their religious status. They may also decide to push for laws to break up the big churches, removing unrestricted tax-free statuses for ministers that make over a certain amount of money. That wouldn't be viable for a secular nonprofit status. We can always hope, right? Hey there, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw from my channel, please subscribe and donate to my Patreon. If you have evidence to counter what I say, please provide it. If you would like to see what I was doing with this channel 6 years ago, please click the links on the screen. Thank you so much.